So this is a Woodbury faculty talk where we give a faculty member an opportunity, I think, to kind of organize their work and present it in front of the school. And hopefully it's a chance for the faculty and the students to get a sense of what faculty are working on, which I think is great. So I was asked to moderate this by Carmelia. Thank you very much. Excited to be here. Excited for you to be here. Let me do a quick introduction of you before we begin. Carmelia Chang is a licensed architect that's lived and worked in multiple cities across the world, including Macau, Tokyo, Lisbon, and Los Angeles. Within the past 5 years, she has contributed to the building and research in the field of architectural design and sustainability projects, and received awards and recognition for visionary built design, master plans, art installations, and exhibitions. She has worked with the Pulitzer Prize winner Tom Main at Morphosis Architects and is currently a project designer leader at Warren Office of Research and Design. She's a design faculty member here at Woodbury University, and we're very excited to hear some of her work. So we've asked Carmelia to come up and give a quick 30-minute kind of presentation about her work. And then afterwards, her and I are going to sit down for about 20 minutes and discuss it, and then open it up to the audience for any questions. So please join me in welcoming Carmelia Chang.
Thank you for having me here today. Thank you, Ryan, for organizing this fall lecture series. I've learned quite a bit in the past 2 lectures, and thank you for having me here today to share what I've learned in the past years about architecture. So throughout my education, I was taught in order to create architecture, we are to seek novelty. The basis of our education was to be experimental and unconventional. In order to realize the work, one has to first understand the conventionality to the construction before challenging it. First learn the rules, then break the rules. And by rules, I'm referencing the real-world constraint. I'm interested in many aspects of architecture. I've chosen 3 aspects I'm most interested in to begin this discussion. The first one is tangential space. Tangential space is a condition caused by 2 surfaces, either physical or implied, approaching to touch at a single point. The moment of the new kiss resolves itself in spatial discomfort, awkwardness, and tension. So the full body expression posture is beyond the mere effect of tangency. The posture expresses tension, awkwardness, discomfort, and temporality. And the second is fold. And there's a long history of folding in architecture, articles written by Bradley, Mario Carpo, and Jeff Kipnis in architectural design. But I'm not trying to disregard the previous discourse. I'm just trying to establish my take on fold and how it is incorporated into the projects. Fold is used as a formal operation that is intrinsically volumetric and tectonics. It is used as disruptive element as well as to create continuity, all depending on scales. And lastly is material application. I'm interested in effect and effect. Well, effect is physical and effect is psychological. Experimenting with material application sometimes become the agents to transform a typical space into an idiosyncratic intervention. Since I created this term tangential space, I feel like I owe an explanation of what it is. So here's a catalog of tangential space. They are categorized in basic tangency, stoic tangency, reacting tangency, continuous tangency, and perceptual tangency. All based on the qualities and characteristics of spatial, programmatic, and perceptual relationships in architecture. This is a proposal for a fashion house in Ginza, Tokyo. The program consists of private runway, 2 interchangeable platform and runway here, and then a retail in the underground. The main circulation is thought to be temporal, depends on time and the scale of the event. It can be used as runway or viewing platform. So in the design process, 3 sectional objects, so there's this 3 sphere, are placed to generate basic tangency, continuous tangency, and perceptual tangency. By elevating the sectional objects from the ground, the structure then becomes much more of a dense field of line in order to support the objects, creating a dense field of lines. The circulation becomes a constant perceptual device along which many conditions of tangency and its byproducts are experienced. The exterior skin is a secondary structural system used as a shock absorber, combined with the 2 mass damper located in the top of the building to stabilize the building so it doesn't crash into the neighboring building, but to kiss the neighboring building. The movement creates a constant kiss dynamic, closing and opening at various geometric tangents. It allows us to constantly experience the closeness, the moment to touch at a single point. So in 2014, I was invited to do a group exhibition called Artivism. We were to showcase our work without any specific common theme. So I thought I would just continue my earlier research, but this time to simplify it. So this was the original model, and I produced a set of physical models, and every single one of them was to trace back to the original and to capture the essence of one moment, whether it's elevating from the ground or implied spherical volume or multi-level with a small footprint. But I realized those moments are almost inseparable. It just kept happening in every single model that I create. And there are probably an infinite amount of possibilities to create objects that fit the same criteria. In terms of documentation, instead of drawing the construction of the objects, I decided to document the shadows they created. The flattening of the object somehow shows more depth and can be used for spatial analysis. Since there are infinite amount of possibility to achieve similar effects, there are no real reason to settle on one if there's no real constraint. So in 2015, I was invited to do a co-show at Design Matter Galleries with Jeff Morto. And this time, the time and the budget constraint led me to find a way to analyze them so one of them can be realized. And this time I worked with my partner, Jeff Guducci, who also have an architectural background, and his focus of work are more object-based and are in the construction spectrum. So with no budget and 6 months, we identified the one that can implement a somewhat systematic approach as a starting point of the installation. We understand it is almost impossible to construct a compound curve without any framework. But we are happy to accept what comes of it, so that this installation stays truly experimental. We have dissected the intrinsic model into 3 strands, we identify where the strands need to meet and what direction they're going. In turn, we've shifted our focus from the overall form to the key moments and mechanisms that allow the form to happen. So here's some process and production photos to show how the strands touch the ground, and the design process of the joint, which we call it O-snap connector. And then finally, the anchor that stabilizes the whole object, which is crucial when you have a big and heavy object up top with a tiny footprint. And here's a diagram of our O-snap connector. This is what allows the kissing moment to happen within our installation. We have looked at multiple PVC pipe connector in the market, but none of them would allow us to have custom rotating angles or joining at different diameter of tubes or joining other connectors. So we design our own and then we 3D print them. Here's some photos of the kissing moment of the installation. And the joints are connecting with another joint here. and the whole installation, how we have the big and heavy objects standing on a tiny footprint covered in this folded shell, which we add more weight, which is gravel, to anchor the installation. Okay, so I was very fortunate to have worked at Morphosis. Not only did I get the opportunity to work with a group of talents from whom I've learned a great deal, but also I got to work on a 66-story skyscraper when I was fresh out of school. Another fortunate thing is that my personal interests are aligned with the project that I was working on. The exterior facade is expressed by the folding language and the expression of lifting off the ground, and there are multiple tangency within the projects. The program is retail at the plinth level and office. So it's really blurry right now, but this is the plinth level, that's retail, and then there's office in the tower. It is the tallest detached core tower in the world. The diagram up top shows us how we challenge the conventional design of tower by pulling the core outside the building. It's almost like we're building two towers instead of one towers, and these two towers are constantly tangential to each other. So here's the plan of the plinth level. And you can see the tangential language are here, but instead of all compound curve, they're actually a straight line connected by arc. And this way is a lot more systematic and constructible. And here's the upper plan of the mid to the upper level of the office, which clearly shows the kissing moment. So this is the detached core tower, and this is the office tower. And this is the 9 meters of space that the two towers are kissing each other, connecting by a bridge. And in this project, the tangency is autonomous. It doesn't need to rely on its neighboring building, and it's tangenting to itself. So another fortunate thing that is not only did I get to design it, I also get to witness it in its built form. Seeing the evolution of the project throughout all phases. On the left is the rendering in the very beginning, the competitional phase. And on the right is what it looks like now. And this is the moment where you're standing on the 4th floor plinth level at the lobby, looking up about 62 stories of bridges above you. And again, rendering versus realized. This was this photo was taken probably a year ago, and right now it's completely top off and it's open to public. So after working with Morphosis, I started working at Wood, one Office of Research and Design, which is also another ex-Morph guy. So we have the same value of design. And the design process are truly collaborative. This is one of the competitions that we have worked on, and yes, it's another Guggenheim project that we have shown in this lecture series. So in this proposal, instead of elevating off the ground, we've looked at using a surface to be tangent to the ground. Having the building envelope does most of the work, whether it's acting as a connecting tissue or the needs for programs or structure. It is all embedded within this tangential surface. And here's an image showing how the building envelope is touching the ground in the waterfront. And the bike path, we have a bike path that's also tangent to the building, connecting to the adjacent park and to the rest of the city. This is another competition that we've worked on, the new Museum of the 20th Century of Berlin. So the site is in the Cultural Forum in Berlin, where it's situated on the north. That is the Philharmonic Concert Hall by Hans Scherung. And on the south side is the new National Gallery by Mies Federer. And in this project, we use tangency as a trajectory, a factor, a force to create reactionary moves. Besides the two main prominent architecture on north-south end, there's also another constraint, which is this 100-year-old tree in the middle of the site that we have to reserve space for its canopy diameter. So we've elevated the building off the ground to allow for pedestrian circulation on the ground level. And we use a void, that's a cone-shaped void that cuts for the tree canopy. And then within this void, we have another void that's cut along the surface to bring light in to become a light well. So the building reacts to the site constraint, and we exploit the opportunity to bring another elements to the building. And this elevation shows the Mist building on the south end and the Han Shirong Philharmonic on the north end, and the circulation on the ground level. Okay, so next project, instead of showing you the final results, I'm going to share the design process with you. There are some these are some schemes for a small jewelry store in downtown LA. It's called Ryan Oro. In fact, this is the smallest project that I've worked on to date, and it's built and demolished. The design process is always a negotiation between the clients, the needs and the wants, and the budget and time. We've gone back and forth with the client in the process. They want to create a new interactive shopping experience where the conventional way of display countertop is not desired. So we created an experience where we use their product to showcase as almost as an exhibition instead of a retail experience. But then later on, they change their mind, and then they want the conventional retail experience again. So then counter is brought back in, and there's no unconventional ways of doing it. So we just need a countertop basically. And then they also want to warm up the space with a ceiling essence with wood. So we're studying multiple ceiling schemes, going from a plane to a ring that's made of rod, to a ring that is made of 2x4 or folded ring. And then finally, we go back to the study of a single plane that is a ring. And then, of course, eventually, there's no ceiling at all due to the real-world constraint, time and budget. However, to represent the desire of manipulating the ceiling, we added a soffit along the curved wall, which was inserted to divide up the back of house and the front of house. The threshold between these two programs is created by an arc-shaped void that's tangent to its surface, creating tangent to zero. So here's some photo showing the use of a very few different material to warm up the space, and the tangent to zero soffit. And showing the details of the ceiling soffit along the curved wall. So to that note, when it comes to details like this, especially on a curved wall, craftsmanship is essential. We are very fortunate to use my partner, Jeff Guducci's service, who have his company Design Debris Lab to project manage this construction, or else we wouldn't be able to achieve clean soffit details like this. So even though the ceiling weren't actually realized, I would actually like to show you what was the focus at that moment. And this was a screenshot where the folded ring was in play, where different geometry were considered, going from rectangle, so a rectangle boundary to a circle and back to a triangle. So we thought that would be, so this is how it would look like if it was built. So even though it wasn't built, we thought it would be a takeaway for our future projects. So fast forward to this summer, we worked on another competition, which I thought would be good to bring back that folded ring. But this time the scale is 10 times bigger. And here's the concept diagrams for the competition for Barilla Pavilion, Barilla, the pasta company. We have looked at using the folded ring to cover almost the whole site, having the folded line tangential to the program arc line. The program asks for a pavilion that's house private art collection, exhibition space of the company history, an experimental kitchen, and a restaurant that's open to public, laboratories, and also a community space that's open to the public 24/7. So the folded ring is broken down by structure, which are concrete frames connected by ring beams. When the folding angle decreases, the fold line rises to allow for second and third story. So the second story was laboratory, and the third story here is open air to allow for mechanical ventilation. This is the site that we were given in Parma, Italy. So this is the existing Barilla factory, and they have a sculpture of park outside. This is part of the parking for the employee and visitors, and this is the main entrance. And this is what we propose. Using the building as landscape, allowing a path to meander up and down the building. So this is the path from the entrance up and down the building. Arriving at the central communal space, surrounded by arrays of solar panels on and off the building, adding additional communal program out to the field. Here's the render at the exhibition gallery, where it shows the history of the company. The spatial quality is fine-tuned by the louvers, skylights, and the openness to the central plaza. And here's the image that we submit for the competition, showing Barilla history. The section here shows the relationship between the folding angle and the allocation of program. The elevation shows the building is viewed as landscape, the subtle rise and fall of its structure, and a bird's eye view to show the exterior of the building. An image to show how we envision the central courtyard being truly activated by the community 24/7 with this big circle community table that can seat 330 people at a time. Okay, so I've been using the word fold quite often, but there's none of it's actually folding a single sheet of material, and that's because of scale. So this project is shifted in scale, literally folding a single sheet of material to become a space, a habitat for plants. The project is developed by the company I partnered up with Gary Ann and Jeff Guducci. It's called Dot, a lifestyle company. And this assembly diagram shows the outer shell and the inner shell of the planter, which were sheet metal being laser cut and then hand folded, with the water catcher down below the inner shell that catch water. And this water catcher is vacuum formed out of one sheet of plastic, where the negative of it become packaging material. Because we are very conscious about our environment, so in every step of our design, we try to minimize waste. And here's full planter assorted. So last semester, we were invited to do an exhibition at the Wedge Gallery. It's called Orbital Light. For those of you who didn't get to see it in person, here's a video to show what we did. Orbital Light is an installation consisted of the juxtaposition between points and tags, both depicting the matter on the planets through light. Tags stand for tetrahedra, the basic geometry of a crystal structure like copper sulfide, which is a substance found in minerals. The form of tag is a magnified form of its crystal structure, which its pattern is cherused with copper pigment on the lens to symbolize its natural transformation. Points, a light box that depicts cities at night, a NASA project that captures human settlement from space for the first time at night. We have chosen 1 to 2 cities from each continent using the scale of 1 to 75,000 to 1 to 100,000, documenting city at night through the use of light. So here's the effects of the installation. For those of you who have been there last semester, you can show me the effects, what you guys feel. And this is a physical light box, which is a 2 feet by 3 feet case, capturing 1 to 75,000 to 1 to 100,000 scale of the city. Okay, next project is using the language of fold in an unfolded manner, along with graphic representation. Using the same color, same material, just by changing its width, we created a strip cutting across the building and its facade. So here's the photograph during construction and after construction. I love this image just because it looks like structural model that you would build in a studio, except it's actually 1-to-1 scale. And here's some interior shots that the language of fold is carried inside as a cutout box where sitting and the backrest is created. Again, when it comes to small project like this, details are essential to the projects. Our wish was to have no cap at the corner, really letting us to see how the lines meet at the corner, but we weren't lucky enough to have great craftsmanship this time. So we had to revise our detail multiple times to allow for the lack of precision. And this shows how we use graphic even on the tension rods here, that when you stand on from the front elevation, you can see the patterns going in the same manner. And the strip that was wrapped around the building cuts the facade and also cuts the window. Okay, so the last project I'm going to show today is more contextual. It is a 131-room boutique hotel in Macau, and the site is located next to a historical heritage, a UNESCO building, which is a vernacular Chinese residence built in the Chang dynasty. So the feature of this residence is its brick facade, the tile slope roof, and its courtyard. So I thought, what if we also have a brick facade? Instead of using the same brick, we create our own version of brick, a scale-up oblique brick. We play with the distance between each brick, each perforated metal box, mimicking the brick, allowing it to look like brick, and adding the chamfer edge to lighten the appearance of it. In this elevation, without the destruction of material and color, you can see the pattern of brick become to assemble. So the program on the ground are retail on the front end, hotel lobby in the middle, and then the rest are all surface. And the typical floor is as many hotel rooms as possible, which is quite difficult, because how can you fit everything as many as possible and still leave room for architecture? So we have expanded the typical double-loaded corridor into 2 corridors, adding a courtyard space in the middle of the corridor, having 2 rooms adjacent to it. So here's the courtyard. The courtyard uses the vernacular features, but the boundary of interior and exterior are expanded through the use of glass. We'd like to create an experience in the hotel corridor that is open, filled with light, instead of a traditional double corridor that's room on both sides and then being lit artificially. So I'm not sure if this actually works. Let's try it. So this is how we explain to the client why this is needed. Doesn't let me move. Up there. So this is the courtyard where we have a lot of vernacular Chinese element in it, and looking up to the 5-story above. So as for the lobby, the mentality of courtyard remains. It is considered as a void that travels through inside and outside of the building. Having the front glazing setback, the exterior courtyard is allowed, and the interior courtyard is actually not a courtyard. But with the continuity of the geometry and the use of light and different materials, the effect of being outside can be created, where the void tangents to the wall and create sitting elements on the side. The language of faux is used on the ceiling plane, creating proportions like the roof of the vernacular residence, as well as the feeling of being at home. Here's the render of the entrance looking at the courtyard. Here's the view of the lobby and the cafe. So we're standing at the entrance of the hotel, looking into the reception area, and this internal courtyard that's lit by plenty of light, so the feeling of being outside can be created. So tied back to the common theme of project versus practice of this lecture series, I think they are absolutely interconnected, inseparable. But the notion of your conceptual interest, the focus of your work, are absolutely affected by the trajectory of your office, which allows what was implicit of the earlier practice to become more and more explicit as the work and experience accumulated over time. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you so much. I think we're going to take a couple minutes just to talk very quickly about the presentation. I hope in the future we have like VR lectures. We all need like Oculus Rift headsets, right? That we can just press a button and go into space. I think it would be more didactic, right? In that way. Let's quickly, I'm going to start in reverse really quickly just because this last project I think is so fascinating. One of the things you talk about is this kind of material application. And so there's two things that are happening in this last project, which is the material finishes within the project itself, right? The kind of surface treatments, but then also the kind of, let's say, massing party of the building kind of acting like bricks. So is there a difference in your own opinion between, let's say, material application as a kind of interior surface treatment versus, let's say, disciplinary misbehavior where you're using the material in a kind of different way, maybe towards scale?
So I'm going to answer your question in more of a less of an academia approach, more of a real world practicing architects approach, where a lot of us would think that it's us versus clients, but in my case, I actually learned a lot from the clients that I would always love to work as a team, and the client have shown us initially what they expect, which is other projects they have done. And here's the package that they expect from the final results. And I told them, no, that's not how we work. We do not just copy what you want and give you what you want. Because if that's the case, you don't have to hire us, right? You can just hire who you've used before. So the way that I see how normal people envision material application is interior treatment, right? It's almost like decorative, it's wallpaper. But I think we do have the power to use material as a space. We should exploit every single opportunity we have to make it more spatial, more volumetric. And the approach of the inside versus outside speak the same language, even though one is more of a surface treatment, one is more of a volumetric treatment. But because it is not considered singularly in just a surface treatment, it's a resonance of the volumetric operation, the result of it that become the surface.
And that's the only material application project you showed, right? So, correct?
That have more focus on it, yes.
Because I think it's really fascinating, and I'd love to see more. I don't know if you've started working on more.
Right.
But I think if you look at the three genres, right, the kind of tangential space, the fold, and the material application, one quick question I have is, obviously the presentation has been diagrammed through those three subjects.
Right.
But is there a chronology to the way you presented them, meaning starting from like the oldest to the newest? Or was it a mix and match?
It's almost in a time sequence, except for the first two installation that I showed, that was after morphosis, and everything else was in a time sequence that it's in jump.
So I think the reason why I ask, I mean, going off your comment earlier talking about, we're doing a theme called project versus practice, I guess, with the lecture series. I think some of the wedge galleries and the lectures we've had so far this semester have been trying to talk about, let's say, a body of work. And as you practice throughout your career, let's say 80 years from now, hopefully you can look back and kind of recognize certain ways of operating and working on your own work. And so the reason I'm asking, I'm wondering, was there a moment, let's say in the past 5 years, where you start to realize this was kind of a constant theme throughout your work?
I think, to be honest, I didn't start realizing until 3 weeks ago when you asked me to put this lecture together. But I also think that it's subconsciousness, that no matter what, at the moment you might not realize that's what you're working towards, but it is your personal interest that is, it's always in your subconsciousness that you will work towards it no matter what.
And that's hopefully what these talks do, is they give you an opportunity to kind of force yourself to think about things differently. I mean, one thing I'm really interested in is kind of tangential space that you're talking about, which is kind of, you made up that word for a second. But I'm wondering how you can kind of define that in a more specific way, because on one hand, especially the roof project versus the piping, when you kind of have that intersection, I mean, in some ways, if you look at tectonics or materiality or connections, a lot of things could be considered tangents. Like, how do you, is it a scale thing, or is it a kind of design thing as far as how you identify those moments?
I think for the past years, I've just been trying to establish what it actually is to me. And that's why I'm not afraid in using it in every single opportunity I can find. And I think for the future will be for me to narrow it down as to really how to define that moment.
So I'm wondering too, is there any work that kind of houses all three of those kind of titles that you've given? Or would you want a project to kind of house all three, or do you think they have to be separate?
I mean, first off, I don't think material application is something that can be inseparable in any real world project, right? Or even a conceptual project, it is there. Like, we live in a tangible world and everything is immaterial. But does that necessarily always be the focus on the project? That's a different thing. And I don't see why those 3 inches always have to be on the project simultaneously. And maybe it will result in the most interesting project, or maybe it won't, because you always overthink it.
I know we've discussed, people starting their career and trying to, let's say, cultivate a body of work, but also get clients. Mm-hmm. It seems like you're very interested in building, which I think is really important. I think it's important for students to understand that too, because I think Woodbury is a platform to kind of cultivate a student who is interested in building and understanding the kind of politics. And I found what was interesting, the kind of process images of you showing what you wanted versus what actually happened. And I'm wondering, talking about this kind of body of work and how you're moving forward, is there anything that you've learned that you could kind of talk about for the students, for the faculty, about, let's say, practicing with clients and codes and and budgets. Is it important, or is it the kind of three tiers that you've focused on more important?
To me, architecture education is all focused on how to have ideas, whereas practicing in the real world, those are skills that you can learn when you're actually practicing. Those are not skills that you need to learn in school. So, but at the end of the day, they are essential. Like you need to be able to wear multiple hats. You need to behave like a car salesman, so then you can have clients. But you also need to have the conceptual, the strong idea behind every single project, so then you're not becoming a normal architect or people who build buildings instead of creating architecture.
Is there something coming up next for you as far as a project, or are you guys still? I know you just completed this folded building. Is there anything in the works?
Scale, transition of scale. I think. Well, I always think that. I mean, we are all interested in the interchangeable of scale, but we all know that it is impossible. Scale is not interchangeable. The concept of scale can be interchangeable, but the physical of scale cannot be changed. So I think a lot of these build projects are quite small, relatively small. So just stepping up to a different scale would be the next step.
I wonder why that is. Do you think it's like everyone's sick of Instagram? Like no one wants these small little 1,000 by 1,000 pixel JPEGs. So the next step is let's get out of the computer, let's get out of the digital, let's go build things, and let's make things really, really big.
I think for me it's time, right? It's that satisfaction that is there. I mean, even though a project is built and demolished, but it's still it happened in the presence in the real world at one point in time. And it, of course, most buildings have a longer presence. So to me, that's a huge thing. Whereas Instagram, you're gonna forget it in a second. And at the end of the day, they're images. They are not natural physical space that we create the experience for.
Yeah, and I get it. I'm very excited to see these kind of these like VR kind of flights, because you can actually experience those things in a digital domain, which is just exciting. But I'm sure it'd be better to actually build them. So hopefully.
Well, some of you guys were in the Wedge Gallery last semester, right? So you guys want to talk about the effect of it?
Yeah, and I think hopefully these talks will help students understand a little bit more about things outside of school. I mean, a part of the conversation around, let's say, project versus practice, not project in the sense of kind of Peter Eisman, but project in the sense of a kind of long-term project in relation to, let's say, building. I mean, it's interesting to see that it seems like buildings are kind of very important for your work. And I get excited to see like the little ... work, right? The kind of relationship of scale and kind of medium and also function.
Right.
So I hope that you guys can walk away seeing that, buildings aren't just everything in architecture. It's also representation, it's conversations, it's objects, or in this case, light installations, which is very exciting. But I want to thank you for taking the time to give a presentation on your work. It was wonderful to see you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Okay.